First, apologies, or maybe start with the show. So welcome to the 135th edition of airhacks TV, and all systems are operational. And sorry for the delay as always. And yesterday I was on the road, so I had to postpone it to Tuesday, which is unfortunate. I don't know why the year 2025, lots of irregularities regarding airhacks TV. But first announcement, maybe you will like it. So just because of today's show, I made it public. So I work for fun on this. You see this? This is the Master Chief Builder. Hello, Mr. Builder. This is the builder. And what it is a build tool without any external dependencies, and it just creates. It compiles, creates an executable jar. So, and how it works is simple. So I would like to open, for instance, here. This is maybe you recognize it from my shorts, and let's say here, hello, airhacks TV, and I would like to create from this an executable file. So what I can do is I can say ZB and run it. And what happened, it created an ZBO output, ZB, this is zero dependency builder output. And here is a file, and I can run it, and it's executable. That's basically all. And I use it all the time because I have lots of small Java snippets, and I don't need Maven, I don't need external dependencies, and for that it's great. And what's interesting, I can build ZB with ZB, which is a bit strange. But it could work. I have to be careful. Here won't, because let's move this ZB somewhere else to ZB here. And now it should work. So ZB shell. And what happened? Now I built ZB with ZB, which is meta. And this app jar is the entire ZB. This is 18K build tool. Maybe I will add class path. It is not a problem, but I don't need it. But I use ZB actually all the time, and I will also open source or make public some smaller tools. So that's the first announcement. You are the first. And yeah, just take a look at ZB, and you will, if you take a look at the source code, it is actually very simple. And I use Maven to build that just because I would like to have a unit test. This was the only reason, but I wouldn't need. This is boundary control entity, and it's actually so there's some simple Java code. So the entire ZB is very simple, and if you take a look at the code, you will recognize some fragments from my daily Java shorts. So you know where my Builder Bean, yeah, Builder Bean will be actually a better name, where my inspiration comes from. Builder Bean, yeah, exactly. I actually made the joke already. I don't know where, in a conference, because this AWS, they're always talking about builders. So I introduced myself as Builder Bean, and the Bean is the great name anyway, because at the beginning of I told this story already. I delivered some courses from Sun Microsystems about enterprise Java beans, and I introduced myself. My name is Bean, and no one wanted to believe that because of enterprise Java beans. So, BB King, right? Java. Okay, so now the announcement is made. Take a look at this. I'm really curious what you say, because I just there's no optimizations, nothing, but it is very fast and it's actually useful for me. So exactly, Christian Vanzant asked me, why should you use static method in an interface? Why not just use a class? It looks weird. You mean this, right? Yes, and the answer is because I could use, okay. I perform a lot of code reviews, and what I see what developers are doing is they start with a class, then make static methods. And then they say, okay, but I don't like to have an instance of the class, and then create a private constructor. And from my perspective, an interface with static method is a lot better. And in this particular case, this class doesn't have any state. So I think it's a good way to do it, just to use an interface. But I'm also spent some time in serverless projects where it's more or less, you have just series of function calls. I use all the interfaces all the time. So I think it looks strange at the beginning, but it works perfectly, right? So and I'm already accustomed to this, do this for years, and for me it looks normal. But I know what I mean, Christian. Yeah. And Spring Spy, Mr. Kaspars. Spring Spy, I don't know what it is. So I wanted to ask, how are you using AI tools like Copilot or Cursor? How? I use them all the time, but not at the same time. I'm using Cursor, Amazon Q, Codium, which become Windsurf. I don't use Copilot, actually. I use ChatGPT Pro, and what is the other one? I use the most Anthropic Claude. And and how I use them, it is actually, they make me angry because they work most of the time, and then they stop working, actually, right? So, but how I use them is, I just actually would like to do to see what they are actually suggesting, right? So it's not like I just investigating how useful they are. And this is basically it. And what I can tell you, they are useful. And what happens if you are working with AI? I think you have to be able to really quickly read the code and very quickly estimate whether the code is actually useful or not, accept or reject it. And you have to write a lot short prompts and be precise what you mean, and then you are very, very fast. So it's like development on steroids, but you have to exactly know what you are doing. Then they could be helpful. Otherwise, you get completely lost. So I would say right now it's a good mix of just using AI and then don't using AI at all. And I think code quality is very important. For instance, if I use Cursor, I spend lots of time thinking about the rules. That, for instance, Cursor will write code like this and not code like Java from JDK 1.0, right? So thank you. And Mr. Kaspars, are you a Spring Spy? I mean, Spring Spy means a spy who only is working in spring, right? Springtime. So we have summer in 3 weeks, and then you are summer spy. Okay. So, ZB, so you met ZB. Now, the second question is a very good one, actually. And interestingly, the reason why I postponed airhacks to today was because of load balancer. One of the topics yesterday was load balancing. And this is a similar question. So, maybe switch to the origin question here is the following. So this is the, I think, Cloudflare load balancer. And he asked me, what is a good load balancer? And so what I used a lot in the past, you will, I think, even find it on my YouTube channel, and Docker images, HAProxy and Nginx. So with HAProxy, what I used, I built a cluster of Docker images. And I think if you search on my YouTube channel, you will find it. This is maybe more than 5 years old. Nginx, very similar. There are two classic load balancers. And there's a project called CSEE, CSEE and SAW. And this is an Linux-based load balancer from Google. It's also great. I would say the three products, Nginx, HAProxy, and CSEE, are great load balancers. But what you can also do, you could even use application load balancer from AWS, for instance, to balance the load of your on-premise servers. So you can have a cloud load balancer which dispatches the traffic to different data centers, for instance. And this could make sense because if you have load balancer, let's say on OpenShift, the ingress controller, then you are already in your data center or in your on your server, and maybe you are searching for a global load balancer, and a global load balancer would mean you would like to have something outside, and then Cloudflare or application load balancer, and if you would like to build it by yourself, HAProxy and Nginx, but you have to be careful because Nginx and HAProxy, they are also commercial offerings. So maybe there is no, I remember, I think HAProxy, only the enterprise version could be reloaded on the fly, and the open source version you had to restart the HAProxy. I think it was HAProxy. Okay, Jao, thank you for watching, because this is really nice. I would say I enjoy my work, so I just do what I do, and for me this is just fun. And thank you for watching, because otherwise there would be no fun. So yeah. Now, and how I would map in a project that use BC an entity post from block. I have post class on the entity layer. That is my JPA entity. So now the question is, I would like to use the request and response from my REST API. Okay, I know what you mean. So you have the post, which is entity, and you don't like to pass the post to the outside world. So I would discuss, first I would say, why not? But let's assume it is like it is, right? So a good approach would be to have a post DTO class on the boundary layer for the response. So I don't think so. And in a second, okay. Now, let's reuse my IDE here. So let's say I have the post class, and you would like to pass something to the outside world, right? So what usually happen, what you could do, you could have JSON object, which I don't have here, to JSON, and create, and your entity could create the internal representation. And what could even do, which is a bit dangerous, what I'm writing here, this is no more Java. So something like this, and you can write your, say this is my post and so forth. So you can have your own title, and this is for instance this one, and formatted and whatever, right? So you can serialize your entity class to JSON. So this is working well in my projects. And what is also working, I'm using JSON-P. So this is like a hash map. JSON-P is called JSON-P. This is JSON processing API, a small one. Or JSON, another one, or JSON. And usually you would like to construct dynamically this JSON. Why? This is a longer discussion, because usually you will have to support multiple versions of the API, and your entities could have a various amount of attributes, and it will be really hard to serialize them. Version 1 could have 2 attributes, version 3 attributes, and so forth. And depending on the requested version, you will have to serialize. Let's say the post version 1 has only title, and the post 2 has title and tags, let's say, right? So depending on the requested version, you will have to serialize, or to serialize tags or just the title. I hope it is clear. So and this is a beautiful code, right? So and usually this would be a record, for instance. Post would be a record, and this would be something like title. And then you could do here this title, for instance, right? This would look like this, for instance. Okay, and yeah, I hope it is clear, and at least this is what I'm doing. Okay. So how would you do if you want a different request for the creation for the post as well? If you could create post DTO on the boundary layer, you could create. So sometimes I know what you mean. So what you would like to do. So I saw projects. What they are doing, they have request objects and response objects in the boundary layer. Is also okay, but if you get with the HTTP request, you get the serialized object as a string, and what usually Quarkus and the others are doing, they are deserializing the string into JSON object, so it happens automatically. So what I'm doing then is I'm converting the JSON object to record if I need it, and if I don't need it, I can just pass the JSON object to S3, DynamoDB, relational database, or whatever. Yeah, and JSON-P, I think I recorded a lots of videos JSON-P. So I did it back then all the time. I stopped doing this because I did it all the time. All my conferences, what I showed actually. So if you watch, Jakarta talks or whatever, I think in all my talks you will find JSON-P or JSON-B. And this is very, very simple. Jakarta, JSON-P, JSON, Jakarta, JSON processing, and wow. It's a cool one. Let's go here. Select a specific, not this one, and Javadoc specification document, and Jakarta JSON, exactly. And there is JSON Builder, JSON object. And this is how you say JSON, create object builder, and this is how it looks like. JSON, create object builder, add, and build. You're done. Yeah. And this is the specification, and one implementation ships, for instance, with Quarkus, Leyden, Micronaut. Exactly. One to many works perfectly. Many to one also works perfectly. What doesn't work perfectly are circular dependencies. Ciao. But this is my way of, in the past I used JSON-B a lot. JSON-B, this is objects which are able to serialize themselves, Java classes which are automatically serialized and deserialized to JSON and from JSON. But as the APIs became, more complex, so I started doing this, and I'm also happy with it. And by the way, if you are working with LLMs, they are eager to generate such code, so there's not a problem. Okay, but with test. Okay, now I think this is also covered. Exactly. And now the question regarding, I hope we covered this. Joao, I hope you are happy with that, right? And thank you for watching my presentation from Java 1.25. And this is quite a story, because you will find a presentation with the same name. I delivered this at in Stockholm at a conference, but I was not happy because it was too theoretical. There were lots of slides, and what I did is actually, thanks to jet lag, I refactored the entire presentation, and I think I even half an hour before the presentation was still not ready, but then it was, and I delivered completely fresh presentation. So it was, the title was the same, but the content completely different. So I'm glad you like that, but it is actually, it was very popular. So I forgot actually the exact number, but at the beginning it was very popular. Now, and now it's very good question, and we also recently several times I got the question about the main branch only. Indeed, I work in all my projects with main branch only, and the question is how it works. So and by the way, yesterday I found out one of my clients, they cannot work with main, and I will tell you why. So what happens? The entire team commits, and every commits, or to be precise, every push causes the CI/CD pipeline to run, which causes the entire application to be deployed in development and sometimes even integration stage, run the system tests, and then the application could be put to production, delivered to production, but whether it is or not is human decision. So there is a human in the loop, decides, she or he decides, okay, I would like, to have a fresh version in production. This works well. It means whatever we do in a team, every push is a CI/CD run, which causes a full test and deployment. And this can run half an hour if you have lots of tests even. Okay, now, and we had a chat yesterday, and in this project, this won't work. Why not? So if you think about this, what is a branch? From my perspective, branch is a marketing initiative, right? So what a branch is it helps you to how to call it, to hold back features and publish all the features at once. This is if you merge the branch. This is for me a branch, and this is usually needed if you have a version, let's say 2, and you would like to wait until everything is ready to publish the version 2. What we do in business projects, we follow, the Firefox or Chrome path. So you don't even notice usually if the browser gets a new version. This is what I would like to achieve in most of enterprise projects. Means every push is a new version and it gets automatically deployed. Now, yesterday I found out it is impossible for one of my clients. Why? Because the releases are dictated by law. So it means the branches are more or less functionality which is dictated by the law. And if the law is, how to call it, enforced or not published, released, I don't know how to call it, then they have to release the functionality as well. And for this particular case, branches are just genius. But this is not very common in my project. So my projects are usually boring enterprise projects. So we don't need, to have even versions like 2.1, 2.2 or whatever. We're not building products usually projects. Okay. So it is trunk-based, yeah? Trunk-based or main-based or whatever we call it. So also funny story. I think I told you the story several times. So there was a German magazine, Java magazine, and they asked me years ago, they asked lots of authors about their branching strategy. And so my answer, and they asked, okay, and all the other authors, they had a nice charts, how they branch and merge. And I remember one author, it looked like a central station, a train station, all the rails. So it would look beautiful. And I said, okay, I have to admit, I don't branch at all. And so I did it, and they didn't publish my article. So this was the story. Okay, let's see. And Joe asked me, and you would create the attribute names with static strings? Joe, sometimes, yeah, but you can be creative, right? You could have enums, for instance. So enums are great for such a thing. So it doesn't have to be hard-coded, but meanwhile, I have to say, before we build another framework, which is reflection-based or iterates or whatever, so nothing against hard coding if you test it, right? If it's simple, why not? So Kennedy Mbogo, I think I know you. We met, right, on a conference. And and asked me, I also saw that something like JSON-P to be brought in the JDK. Are you aware of this? Yes, and there is an issue. And it was briefly mentioned in Java 1, and I'm waiting for this because it would be a great solution for all of my projects. So if this comes out, it will be great because I have lots of projects with the only dependencies JSON. So and Mbogo, if you search for that, you will find an issue, OpenJDK issue with mentioning JSON, and this is actually an old issue which was, how to call it, reactivated recently. And Christian Warnsatz says trunk-based. Absolutely. So, and by the way, in enterprise project, what I saw is that the external companies or consultants, they loved branching. And what happened then is they just branched for the entire iteration, and they were always too late for merging. So they completely misused the branches. It means they spent all the time in the branch, they had a private branch, and then at the end of the iteration, at the sync, it was a huge mess, right? So this is why, as always, if you ask me something, usually I ask for the reason. No, I would like to do something because, and not just because everyone else does that. Okay, now Tomar Muno, I think, recently saw tip and tile presentation by Alex Barkley. Interesting presentation for versioning strategy. Yeah. And Java says, and the boundary would return the JSON object as its string type. The JSON object, Java is usually understood by JAX-RS. So if you just return JSON object, it will be automatically serialized in a string. And this is a good point. The boundary is actually in charge of calling T2JSON method, because what you would like to have is in controls and entities working with nice Java records and classes, and the boundary is responsible of conversion between the classes and the JSON objects. Now, Mr. Jet Pilot Primac, and he asked me, and this is Lenny Primac, or Primac, I think, from Nebraska. He asked feedback. So great job, thank you. And updated benchmark about RequestScoped and EJBs. Now, what it is? So Mr. Zoleni, or years ago, everyone said, okay, EJBs are slow. And there was a huge push towards CDI. And what turns out is that EJB are actually faster than RequestScoped. Why? Because they are pooled. And the pooling is one thing, because what pooling does is it keeps the instances can be reused, and if the instances are reused, they don't have to be created and also not garbage collected, and therefore, so it's good. This was the initial idea of EJB pooling, but with dependency injection, it became even better for EJBs, because just imagine you have one class and another class and another class, and everything is injected. Now, if the first class or first instance is pooled, the entire graph is going to be pooled, which saves performance. Now, and RequestScoped, there is no pooling in RequestScoped, which means the entire object graph has to be recreated over and over again. And what I found out back then is like there was like 10-15% EJBs were always faster than RequestScoped. And this was funny because lots of projects migrated to RequestScoped from EJBs because they assumed, without measuring, that EJBs are too slow. Now, Quarkus is different. Why? Because the injection is usually slow on application servers because they use reflection. And Quarkus is not using reflection. So what Quarkus is doing, it is just setting the references at build time, more or less. So it doesn't use reflection. It generates bytecode. So this is the trick. And therefore, the Quarkus is able to inject dependencies without reflection. And therefore, it is faster. So I would say I never measured that. So what I will have to do is you could, for instance, compare application scoped with request scoped in Quarkus. So then you have to estimate what's the difference. And I assume is a little bit faster, but it should not matter, except you have several thousand transactions per second. So there's always difference. But for my boring projects, it actually does not matter. This is why I didn't test this, because Quarkus was always fast enough. Yeah, and I think I answered the question already, but for our friend of the show, Lenny. So this is, again, now, another question is the following. So this is like, now the question is regarding, would like to update you that I'm working on Payara, so startup I almost as good as Quarkus. Yes, this is true. Deployment is certainly just as fast as Quarkus. Project Leyden is game changer here. So, okay, what is Project Leyden? Project Leyden is like CDS on steroids. What CDS is class data sharing. It's an old technology in Java E, but Java SE, and Project Leyden is the next iteration. And what it does is it can pre-train your Java code, then store the entire memory image. It's almost like goes a little bit towards similar to GraalVM, and then it starts significantly faster. So and it says advantage of Quarkus not spectacular. Now it becomes Java is getting better, and general population are getting spread through all products. So reflection is no longer a no-go. Franz is Franz is one of my guests on the podcast. And so what Lenny is claiming that you could use Payara because Payara is almost as good as Quarkus. Now, so recently we introduced Quarkus in projects. And why Quarkus is different to Payara? I think the performance really doesn't matter because Java is incredibly fast. And Quarkus is so fast that it actually, so it's also a funny story. One of my clients, they hired me to have a workshop about, told the story already, but just for Lenny, to have performance, to have highly scalable Quarkus application, and they wanted to use reactive programming. And what's turned out, so I asked them, what's your, the most critical service? And they said, okay, the most critical service requires, I forgot, 2,000 transactions per second, I think it was. And what's turned out is that the Quarkus, without any optimization, was able to deliver like 15,000 transactions per second. They are actually, the numbers are published, and with reactive programming, double that for 30,000 transactions per second. So I would say it really doesn't matter. It's just fast enough for most enterprise projects. Now, what's interesting is the machinery. So Quarkus and Micronaut are similar. Everything else is different. And what Quarkus and Micronaut are doing is they are deploying at build time. And what Quarkus also is doing is kind of a tree shaking. So it means because it deploys at build time, it knows which dependencies are used. And if it knows which dependencies are used, it, for instance, in production then, it can shut down classes which are not used. So what it means is it is a little bit more secure. And because there is no reflection in just single class loader, it is the fastest and smallest runtime you can get. And because it is based on standards, it is so fast, we pick Quarkus. Now, the question is, what is the advantage of Payara? And I thought about this recently because I use Quarkus a lot for serverless, which you cannot do with Payara. And what serverless means is I run Quarkus as AWS Lambda. So I'm misusing Lambda as a cheap platform, a runtime platform, right? Now, but if you have several thousand transactions per second, such a serverless runtime is actually too expensive. So what you could do is you could actually deploy Payara on EC2 machine, pay in advance, and now you have your own cloud. You can put actually on a Payara server multiple applications which belong to you. This is actually, back to the roots 20 years ago and save money. Because if you think about this, every Quarkus is a new instance. So at one point of time, you have to start the launch the entire JVM plus Quarkus plus the application. And with Payara, you launch Payara once and you can deploy multiple applications. And with virtual threads, you can be very efficient with waiting, basically. And what also Payara has is Payara Cloud, which is not available for Quarkus. I would say complete different use cases. But for standard use cases, I pick Quarkus. I don't use Micronaut because it doesn't support fully microprofile. Or not fully, it is significantly less than Quarkus. And another great runtime is Helidon and Payara or Glassfish. Also, Glassfish is also supported. There's a company behind Glassfish right now. You can have complete different use cases. Okay, Christian, branching can be useful, but makes things often more complicated than necessary. Trunk-based is easy and great for teams to have always a functional state without merge conflicts. Absolutely, Christian. This was why I never understood actually branching. And if you really would like to have branches, you will actually have to run in a branch CI/CD. So you will have lots of CI/CD runs, right? Okay, now Luis Daniel Meza Velasquez. Do you use native images? Yes, no, why? Made a product that set up full infra for my customers, and each microservice with around 20 endpoints is around 30 megs, but have 50 minutes to build with Quarkus. Yes. So on-premise, OpenShift, for instance, I would consider to use GraalVM. Why? You can have faster startup times on Kubernetes for scaling, and you save memory. And if you save memory, you can pack more instances. And saving memory on premise, this is so the memory is actually the cost driver. In public cloud, I never use native image. Why? Because on public cloud, I always try to go the serverless route. Why? Because from my perspective, on premise, we can do crazy stuff, right? On premise, you have Java Flight Recorder. We can use CryoStart. We can do things which are not possible in public cloud. So we can actually have complete real-time observability for free, more or less. But in public cloud, I don't like to replicate my on-premise environment because it will be too expensive. So on public cloud, I would like to use as much infrastructure as possible from the public cloud. And this is called serverless. So we use only managed services. So means if I deploy Quarkus to public cloud, to AWS, I'm using Corretto. And if I run Quarkus as an Azure function, I'm using Microsoft build of OpenJDK. So I don't like to maintain my own JDK. Why? Because the JDK Java runtimes are patched by cloud providers, and I don't like to be responsible for it. If I would create a native image, I will have to maintain the native image by myself. I will have to patch it, and I also have to deal with licenses. So this is when you would like to have native image, for instance, on OpenShift, and you're buying support from Red Hat, I would suggest to use the Mandrel distribution and not GraalVM. So this is why it really depends. But on my local machine, my CLI tools, sometimes I'm using GraalVM to create a native image because it's nicer, right? I drop the native image to use a bin and just launch it. But with I do the same. What you saw with the ZB, you can go to the repository. I have small wrapper shell script, and I can achieve the same without GraalVM. So I hope we covered everything. This is actually incredible, except the time machine. So let's take a look what happened 8 years ago. So Java EE 8 news, and there is a, let's see, what's that? There was an OCI Java SDK, so it is interesting. So this is Oracle Cloud, still active. 4 hours ago, there was a commit. Oracle Infrastructure SDK for Java, for instance, infrastructure as code for Java. So we discussed this 8 years ago. And by the way, I would say Oracle is actually really interesting alternative to other clouds. Because why? Because complete different cost model, and they are more like, as my opinion is, or my observation, not opinion, is more like boutique cloud where you can actually have your own private cloud, dedicated cloud to you. And what's also interesting is Oracle is part of this target, right? But 8 years ago, I don't know actually why I got a question regarding OCI Java SDK, and I actually would like to do more with it. Right now, all my projects are AWS, but this one could be also interesting. Okay, now so we have the OCI public cloud. Now you see handling JPI relations in crowd microservice scenarios. So also a question similar to today. What's interesting is the role of RX Java in typical enterprise applications. So back then already, the entire discussion started with reactive programming, and hopefully I was also against that 8 years ago. But right now it completely died, right? With virtual threads, you don't need it anymore, I would say. Watch this. Jack Soros, returning responses versus object and JSON versus XML. Exactly what we discussed today. 8 years ago, I got the same question. Useful Java E7 tools. Okay, forget it. But cross-field entity validation. This is interesting. Last year in a bank, so they asked me about LLM use cases and what we used as a proof of concept. There was one LLM, and we used this LLM for cross-field entity validation, like Hibernate validator for entities, and it worked great. So GPL on LGPL, open source and commercial projects. I would say GPL and GPL for commercial projects. Don't use these dependencies; they cause always trouble. And if you would like to publish your open source project as GPL and LGPL, I think this is now more common than back then. And there are, I think the editor Z is like ZED is a GPL. So it is not because they would like to prevent forks. So it could be an option. Pack4j, let's see whether it is available. That's interesting. I forgot actually to look at this. Maybe we do this the next time. Pack4j, this is actually, let's see what it is active. Last week, this is crazy. I think we should take a look at this. I thought it was the security engine for Java. So we should take a look at this. It's an interesting project, still active. And Pack4j. This is your job. Take a look and ask question, right? Homework. Transactions, CRUD services. Okay, this is a very common questions. You know how you deal with transactions and CRUD services and microservices. And connection sharing, also interesting. So connection sharing, there's usually no connection sharing in a database. So the transaction is bound to connection, except you have a two-phase commit. Look at this, SCM, managing, structuring, and organizing microservices, similar to trunk only. Gradle versus Maven. I still get the questions, right? So I'm still doing Maven, and now of course ZB, but this is I mean, you cannot compare it to Maven. This ZB is not able, for instance, to download dependencies from Maven. I could actually do this, but I don't need it. Set up scripts in Java EE environment. Is this less? So for instance, in Quarkus, we don't do this at all. We use infrastructure as code right now. Oracle JDK, OpenJDK, and licensing. So this is a less common question, but a very interesting point is on that note is the LTS. I had already chat with Oracle Evangelist and with Nikolai Palok, and what he told me, there is no more LTS, for instance, long-term support, because this LTS back then was only available from Oracle, or mainly available from Oracle. And right now, every vendor can decide what LTS actually is. So, and this, I took a look at that, and this is still available. So this is like an interesting one, build doc as a product, not an afterthought. It seems like this documentation generation thing, and it looks fresh, so it survived. So nice. And this is from Panama. And also interesting, model-driven architecture in Java EE. What's the role? And I would say model-driven architecture is less common than 8 years ago, but what is more common and very similar to MDA on steroids are, of course, LLMs. And as already noted, what I think what will happen is, if you are you understand code, you can read quickly, and you're a good programmer, I think with LLM you can just fly, right? So this will be far more efficient, but also a little bit exhausting, because you can fully focus and read a lot what this LLM does, you know, and reject, accept, and this is sometimes annoying even, right? And and my observation, because I got a question regarding LLM's experiences, what I observed is how to call it, the LLMs. If you say, you know, to LLM, fix the problem, what happens frequently that they fix the problem, but they are not fixing the actual cause. They are fixing the how to call it. Let's say so what happens recently? Actually, in the ZB, I was just curious, and there was an error. And I said to LLM, try to fix the error, right? And what the LLM did is, I mess. So how to call it? Relativized path twice. This was the error. I called relativized twice, and the error was I couldn't find, you know, the sources. And what LLM did, instead of fixing this, LLM hard-coded source main Java, which fixed the error, but just for Maven project and not the others. So you have to be extremely careful with LLMs. But if you know what you are doing, you are very fast. That's all. Yeah. Symptom and not the sickness. Exactly. And the LLMs are killing the sickness, but not the symptoms. And with this wise note, right? So this could be a title of the next conference talk. So we started with what? We started with, where is it? With load balancers and stopped with sicknesses and symptoms. On that note, I would say see you next month. Thank you for all the questions. And by the way, I forgot to mention, the GeekOn conference was really great. So I really enjoyed that. So in a cinema, so I presented the shorts and got lots of questions. So actually there was lots of interest, but I'm still stunned because the shorts are just hello worlds. And I managed, I think, to deliver more than 100 the first time. So it was fast pacing. And of course, there are workshops on the horizon. Forgot to mention that. But I will have to shift one. I think this one I will have to shift 2 days because I'm busy on July the 10th. And yeah, this one will be fun. And this one is even more fun. And the next one will be in winter. Okay, on that note, thank you a lot. And see you next time. Bye.